Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one where we dive into tons of interesting books and stories, and another where we just dive into tons of great, interesting topics. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, let's learn all about the lost colony of Roanoke. Yes, the lost colony of Roanoke. If you know American history, this was our first attempt at a permanent settlement that England tried to pull off, and it was a total debacle. As a matter of fact, they brought people from England. They expected to survive. They didn't, and they're still looking for them because they were lost. They disappeared. They vanished. What happened to these people? 117 of them. That's what we're going to try to answer. So this story begins with Christopher Columbus in 1492. He sailed for Spain. He discovered this new world, but he did not discover the new world. He thought it was India. That's why he called them Indians. For years, up until his death, he still believed that he had not found this new world. He passed away in 1506, still insisting that it was Asia. It wasn't until shortly after, in 1501, 1502, after exploring the coast of South America, that a gentleman by the name of Amerigo Vespucci said, you know what? No, this is not Asia. This is not China. This is not India. This is a new continent. And a cartographer, a man who makes maps, his name was Martin Waldseemüller. He was the one who gave the new land the name America, based on Amerigo Vespucci. So here we are, all of a sudden, because he put down the flag of Spain, they were the first to arrive, and they colonized and set up settlements in the Caribbean, in Central America, in South America. And then Hernan Cortez conquered the Aztecs in Mexico. Francisco Pizarro toppled the Incas in South America. And Spain immediately became rich, very rich. You had Portugal that focused on Brazil. You had France that was exploring Canada and the St. Lawrence River. And England? No, they weren't anywhere near this new world. They were late, to say the least. Why? Because in the early 1500s, they had more on their plates. They had so much more to worry about and were concerned about. Definitely not worrying about this new world, because there was plenty of political instability, religious upheaval. I mean, it was all about Henry VIII. It's that simple. Those of you that know Henry VIII, boy, and yes, exactly, boy, he wanted to have a boy as a son. He needed a male heir. Why? Because England had just come out of a long, brutal civil war. It was called the War of the Roses, and without a clear successor, the country could fall back into chaos. His wife, Catherine of Aragon, isn't providing him a son, so Henry does something shocking. He asks the Pope for permission to divorce her. Imagine that. He's got to ask permission. He's the king. The Pope said no. Henry, what was his response? Are you kidding me? I am king, and I'm not letting anybody boss me around or tell me what to do. So he broke away from the Catholic Church entirely. This moment, which was called the English Reformation, changed everything. He created the Church of England and declared himself the head of the church, not just the King of England, but the head of the Church of England. This wasn't just a religious change. It changed everything. Suddenly, Catholics versus Protestants, this new followers of the Church of England, they became bitter enemies. Monasteries were shut down, their lands were taken away from them, and it was pure chaos. And so you can understand why England was distracted and isn't worried about a new world. They were worried about themselves and taking care of their own country. Henry VIII, he became ruthless. He ended up killing advisors, people around him. He even executed 2 of his own wives. The message was clear. You disagree with me, you're not going to survive. This created a climate of fear, and it wasn't the kind of environment where people and investors say, hey, let's just risk everything and go out to this new world. Because remember, if you're going out to the new world, it's not just about just getting on a little boat and having some fun. Hey, let's go to the new world. You needed lots of money, lots of ships, and that wasn't a reality in England during this time. Now, just to be clear, this is right around the time Vespucci is looking at basically telling the world that we do have a new world here, and it's right around the time that Columbus passed away. Henry VIII became king in 1509, and he broke away from the church in 1534. So you can see how this entire time period, Spain had such a big head start. And again, England wasn't doing anything as we go into the 1500s, mid-1500s. Henry VIII passes away in 1547, and his son, at just 9 years old, Edward VI, he becomes king. But no, his reign is short. He dies young in 1553, and then Mary I ends up becoming queen. And her reign is then what? Only another 5 years? She reversed everything, returns England to Catholicism. She ends up prosecuting all the Protestants, and she marries Philip II of Spain. I mean, this was horrible what she did. They ended up giving her the name Bloody Mary because she actually ordered the execution of some Protestants. I mentioned that she prosecuted them, but 280 people were actually burned at the stake. So here she is, very unpopular with most of the English people. She marries, like I said, King Philip of Spain. And so why did her reign end? Very simply, she passed away. And this is where everything turns for England. And this is why and how we're getting back to the lost colony of Roanoke. Why? Because now Queen Elizabeth I becomes the queen. Here she is now. It's 1558, and what's really interesting, this all goes back, this line of succession goes back to Henry VIII. He had said, you know what, he passes away, Edward VI would be president, his son, and then if he passed away, it would be Mary I, and if she passes away, and this is what happened, Elizabeth would be the queen. Elizabeth was the daughter of Henry VIII, and she was the half-sister of Mary I. So Mary passed away without a child, so the crown naturally passed to Elizabeth. Her rise is more than just another ruler. It was the turning point, like I mentioned. The country was exhausted from religious violence. People were fearful of more swings back and forth. They desperately wanted stability, and Elizabeth understood this. She didn't push extremes. Instead, she created a balanced Protestant system that most people could live with. But here's the thing. What she did for the first time, she looked outward. She started concentrating on the new world, and eventually we land back here at Roanoke. And no question, I've spent the time to go over the past because things happen for a reason. England was late to the party, arriving in the New World because of everything that was happening at home with Henry VIII and all his subsequent survivors. So Elizabeth is the queen. And to understand really ultimately what happens with these voyages out to Roanoke, you have to understand Sir Walter Raleigh. Because in many ways, the entire dream of an English American begins with him, not the Queen. Now, she bankrolls everything and she solidifies everything, but it was Raleigh. And he had humble beginnings. He was born in England, Southwest England. His family was Protestant, and that mattered during that time period because he ended up fighting in these religious wars in France on the Protestant side. So from an early age, he learned everything: military strategy, politics, survival, certainly ambition. He first gained attention fighting in Ireland for the English crown during these brutal campaigns against Irish rebellions. Elizabeth noticed him. She rewarded him with land, money, influence, you name it. So Raleigh becomes not just a celebrity, but a political insider and, part explorer. Because at this moment, Elizabeth was watching Spain grow rich from this new world, and she wanted in. So she granted a charter in 1584. The charter is basically permission, in this case from the Queen, saying, you know what? Go claim land in this new world for us. Raleigh now had the authority to explore, settle colonies, govern a new territory, and keep part of this wealth for himself. Raleigh had become one of Elizabeth's most trusted and ambitious men, and more importantly, he promised England something nobody else had delivered yet for the country: a foothold in this new world. So here he goes off to the new world, but here's the thing, he doesn't go. It was too dangerous at this time. Everyone knew it. It was a treacherous voyage, and Elizabeth didn't want him to go. But certainly, what did he do? He organized it, he funded it, he promoted it, but he had others go instead of him. But I tell you what he also did, this area, he ended up naming it in Virginia in honor of his friend Elizabeth, the Queen. So here we are now. Finally, we're off to the new world. And in terms of Roanoke, there were a few expeditions prior to this famous lost colony. Well, in 1584, two captains explored the coast of present-day North Carolina, and they encountered two Native Americans, Wanchese and Manio. These two were taken back to England. Imagine this. These were tribal leaders. These weren't just any Native Americans. Wanchese was a Roanoke tribal leader, and he ended up growing really suspicious of the English after visiting London, but his story is yet to be told. And Manio, he was a Croatan chief who became a close ally and an interpreter and a guide for all these colonists coming over to this new land. These two were huge. The first Roanoke settlement now ends up happening in 1585. It was led by this gentleman by the name of Ralph Lane. This group is mostly soldiers. It wasn't about a permanent settlement. It's just a military outpost. Why? Because they weren't risking having women and children come. They don't know what's out there, so they came to scout, they came to claim the land, and they came to challenge Spain. And yes, they ended up landing on Roanoke Island, which is just off of the outer banks of North Carolina. Between these outer banks, this long strip of islands that is right next to the Atlantic Ocean, it's between that and the mainland of present-day North Carolina. At first, everything seemed promising, but right away, tensions rose quickly with the local tribes. Food becomes scarce, trust breaks down, and eventually the settlers abandoned the colony and returned to England with Sir Francis Drake. But here's the twist. Just days later, a resupply ship arrives, but they came too late. Everyone had left. They found the colony empty. So they left 15 men behind to hold the claim for England. 15 men alone. And now this is where the story starts. In 1587, 2 years later, a new group arrives. This time it's different. Yes, they wanted a permanent settlement, families, women, children, and they were led by this gentleman by the name of John White. He had been there prior. He had mapped the area. He knew the area, and that's why he was ready to claim the land and settle the land for England. But listen to what happened. Originally, when they came back, they didn't want to go to Roanoke Island. They wanted to go to the Chesapeake Bay. But the ship's captain, this gentleman by the name of Simon Fernandez, made a fateful decision. He dropped them off at the island, Roanoke Island instead. Why? We don't fully know. Maybe impatience, maybe weather, maybe something else. A lot of people think that something nefarious was going on here because White was livid. As much as he knew the area, he thought he had a better shot of having a permanent settlement up in Virginia. But here was the interesting part. Fernandez was in charge while they were on the ship. His ship, he was captain. White wasn't in charge until they landed. So Fernandez made the decision. A lot of it came down to him wanting to get back to England. It was late. He didn't think he would have enough time to go north again to Virginia and get back to England in time. So the decision was made. Trouble began immediately once they were off the ship, and here they are back at Roanoke Island. The 15 men left behind, they were gone. There was no sign of them. A man by the name of George Howe went out first looking for crabs. Well, they're bringing everything off the ship. They found him face down, arrows in his back. The message was clear right away. This land was not safe. The Native Americans were not happy that they were back. Now, Manio, the Croatan chief, the one that had traveled to England, he helped the colonists. He established a peace. He built a relationship between his people, the Croatans, and the settlers, but the tensions were high. And one night, John White, because of what happened with George Howe, he ordered a raid on a nearby group in retaliation, believing that they were the ones responsible for Howe's death. But they attacked the wrong people. They were friendly Croatans. This angered Manio's people. The trust was shattered. I mean, it was clear that this first attempt at a settlement here in England was not off to a good start. But listen to this. In terms of the English people, all of these centuries later, here we are. During this time, the first English person in the New World was born. White's daughter gave birth. Her name was Virginia Dare, the first baby born in the New World, a symbol of hope. but the problem was still there. Supplies were running out. All of the effort and all of the trouble getting there and the struggles they had initially was now coming to a head. The colonists begged John White to return to England for help to get more supplies, more food, more weapons, everything. He agreed, and he promised to return quickly. He figured he would be back in months. James White didn't return for 3 years. Oh boy, he was fighting to get back from the moment he arrived in England. But he couldn't get back. Why? Because England was now at war. Spain was preparing this massive invasion. The Spanish Armada threatened everything. All the ships were needed to fight this war, to fight this threat from Spain. It was England's very existence that was on the line. They weren't worried about this new world and a few hundred people. They were needed to defend England. So no one could spare a vessel to return to Roanoke. White was stuck, waiting, helpless. Finally, in 1590, James White returned. He landed on Roanoke Island. What he finds is nothing. Eerie silence. Empty. No people, no bodies, no signs of violence. Just one clue. And it was carved into a post. Croatan. Croatoan. And there was another partially carved into a tree, crow. Before leaving, White had agreed with the settlers. If they left in danger, they would carve a cross. There was no cross, which suggests that they left willingly. White went to search for them. Croatoan Island was south. It's modern-day Hatteras. It's nearby. But when he went to search for them, there were storms that knocked the ship out. There was damage. The crews refused to continue on south. It wasn't far. But here's the thing. White was forced to return to England. He never saw his family again. So the question is still today, what happened to these settlers? Historians have several theories. Number one, they moved to Croatan like we had talked about. That's the most accepted theory. They joined the friendly Native Americans and they were absorbed into the tribe. They married into it. They had children. They survived. They prospered. But they never ended up making connections back with the original settlers from England. The second idea that historians think, they tried to move inland, perhaps toward Chesapeake Bay, and maybe they were attacked. Maybe they couldn't survive. Obviously, they tried to survive, but there was nobody found. They're still looking for them. That's a possibility. They were attacked by Native Americans. The third possibility, maybe they just split up. One went one way, others went another way. That made it harder for them to track. And of course, they didn't survive, maybe not from being killed by Native Americans, not by moving north, not by integrating, but maybe it was just simply disease or starvation. Any small failure could be fatal. Now, archaeologists have connected some dots. There are coins that were made up until the late 1500s that could only be brought from settlers that went originally to Roanoke Island. There was also some other jewelry that was said to have, again, not been made after this time period. But they also found evidence of European tools, a bunch of different clues among Native American sites, but nothing official, nothing definitive, no proof. Imagine if you're John White. You leave your family behind. You promise to return. And when you finally do, no one's there. They're all gone. No goodbyes, no explanation. Just a word carved into wood. Croatan. Is it a clue? Is it a message? We're still trying to figure it out 450 years later. What really happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? What we do know is that because of this debacle, Sir Walter Raleigh was still looking to establish a permanent settlement. And spoiler alert, future episode, no doubt, they did. And it was located in the original spot they wanted to go, the Chesapeake Bay, in a place called Jamestown. Captain John Smith, John Rolfe, Pocahontas all became famous. But John White and his family and all 117, they should have been the ones that were famous. They should have been the ones that were originally our permanent English settlement. But we don't know where they are today. But we owe a debt of gratitude to these original men and women that tried but failed. It's an amazing story. Friends, thanks for staying with me on this journey, learning all about the lost colony of Roanoke. Reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group, OK Let's Learn. We have a YouTube channel, OK Let's Learn. I love the ratings and the reviews on Apple Podcasts. Hit that plus button in the top right-hand corner. That will allow you to subscribe to the podcast, get all new episodes on your phone every couple days when they're released. Until next time, have fun and keep learning.